Hi everyone and welcome back to the Colour Cave where we like to play with art stuff. My name is Jem and this is the penultimate video in Cave Mark 2. 1, 2, 3, Few things in the stash shop going into the sale. I will be making further reductions on the sale stuff on Sunday, which will give you roughly 24 hours to pick up any absolute last minute bits and pieces because the shop will shut at close of business on Monday the 26th. So in the stash today I have my set. These are my very own Gansai Tambi watercolour paints. I have had these for a very long time and I've barely used them. They are full pans, so they're massive. Like, that's a lot of paint, there's a lot of stuff going on there. And in with that is some rice paper, because these are not like traditional Western watercolours, they are more like dye based, and they're designed to go on rice paper, so some rice paper there with that as well. A few other bits and pieces as well. I've got an Artful Pad bundle as well. This paper is marvellous and it's also very expensive, so if you'd like to get some of that for a bagging, you can check that out as well. And I found these hiding in a wee corner. These are the Eclectic Erudite Beautiful Bugs postcards. There's 2 packs, it's just the postcards, there's no stickers. I don't know, these must have got like fallen down the back or something. Anyway, there's 2 sets of those there as well. And I've also got a selection of art magazines. There's going to be 2 or 3 of those as well. Again, that I just found tucked away when I was starting to pack stuff away. Okay, so let's head into Fragile Worlds now with lovely Kerby Rosanes and do some work on our penguins. Alright, so we're going to take a little look at our penguins first of all. I thought that would be a nice place to start. As you can see, I have finished the water on this side of this image as well, so we're all sorted out there. So I'm going to start at the top right, I'll just work my way across gradually. I did notice I ended up doing this a little bit darker in here, and I didn't do it intentionally, but I think it's quite fitting that we decided that the light source was kind of heading in this direction, and I've made this bit a little bit richer. Well, there you go, that was a happy accident. So with the penguins, I have noticed that they do have a tiny little bit of colour that runs down the side of their face and round their eye. Apart from that, they're mostly black and white and a little bit of grey in the middle. So what I would like to do is kind of exaggerate that pink a little bit, and it's really just to give us a pop of colour in some of these looks, in some of the sort of more muted areas. So we do have to pick a sensible colour of pink though. I was thinking the common or garden pink here, which is PC929, and I want to get a really good point on that because we're going to be working in some pretty tight areas. So in addition to that pink, we are also going to have the following colours for our penguins. Black, which is PC935, 70% warm grey, which is PC1056, and 90% warm grey, which is PC1058. The only other pencil that I'm going to be using in addition to this for the moment is our good old Sunburst Yellow, which is PC917, and I'm just going to use that for some reflections. And the first thing I'm going to do is do this little outline. I say I'm going to exaggerate it somewhat. I feel as if it's we've got reason to. So it's kind of round their eye area, like this. And then at the underside of their beak. So if we do that on a couple of these little dudes here. And again, I'm pressing quite hard with the pink. Don't know what we're going to do with this little guy down here. This is the one that's kind of like bent himself backwards. He's kind of made a rod for his own back here. Yeah, I'll just get rid of a wee bit. Even if we just get round their eyes there, that's absolutely fine. So the reason that I picked out a couple of greys, I'm not quite sure how much of each. I feel like these guys up here are going to be lighter just because they are in the light. So I think I'm going to take the 70% grey and I'm going to use that here, a light layer of that on the penguin that's closest to the light source. So we'll put a little bit of that in there. With my Sunburst Yellow here, we'll just get a little bit of a highlight going. Just on the very edge there, and maybe a little bit on the bottom of his belly there. That'll be quite cute as well. Maybe he's just like enjoying the sunshine. So I need to think now about the position of this light source. So stick with the 70, and there's going to be pretty dark. And then maybe follow some hatching here. He looks quite happy. Let's move on. So again, Darkest in the hatching. I'm just sticking with the 70% here. I'm not going any further. And I feel like this side will be much darker. They do have quite interesting patterns and whatnot, these little penguins. So if you don't want to cover them entirely in your grey or black, then that's okay. So quite a lot of them have got like little speckles and stuff on them. And their feet are black as well, so not much you can do about that really. I'm going to give him a little bit of black on his beak as well. Okay, they've got this little dude that's looking out at his albatross. He looks kind of angry, honestly. So that's our up top penguins. They are dealt with. If we move down, we've only got this one little dude down here that's bent over backwards, and then his friend who's either looking at his feet or something else. So again, I think I'd maybe veer into the darker colours here, so the 90% and the black would be better here, because they're kind of like shielded from the sun by by this rock. So I'm going to put a light layer of the 90 down here. You can see this is a pencil I hardly ever use. It's very, very long. Because it's so close to the 70 and it's so close to black, it's just obviously not been... I'm trying to figure out if he's upside down. He's like looking upwards and backwards, which is really strange. I don't know if that actually looks any darker than what's going on up there. I think it looks exactly the same, if I'm honest. So I'm not filling him in completely. Again, I'm leaving him a little bit of texture and whatnot, because they do tend to have this like irregularity in their... do penguins have coats? Do we call it coats? Plumage? Feathers? I don't know. They are feathered, aren't they? So using this 70, I'm going to add in... So I'm just putting a little bit of grey here in their chest areas. They're not, pure as the driven snow type white. There, that's looking fairly good. So I'm just going to jump over and I'll do these ones. I'll speed this bit up, but I'll do that and we'll get cracked on with the underwater ones as well in just a moment. This little guy over here looks like he's had a fright. He's like, oh, what's happened? Okay, I've got a very crumbly nib. I've actually got half a point here. So I'm gonna try and go easy here until this kind of like starts behaving itself again. This little penguin here's got a lot more detail on him than some of these other ones, which is quite interesting. Maybe he was, I don't know. I was about to say maybe he was one of the first ones drawn, but that would imply that Kerby got lazy. And, you can't draw stuff like this and be lazy at any point, so that is not a valid point. But I just find it interesting that his little markings and everything on his face are much more detailed than some of the other ones. So just really to get rid of some of the white of the paper, there are not really any other reason. See, I feel like this would be dark and... Oh, that's... Oh no, this is the problem with Prismacolors. I have to say it's not a huge disaster, like it's not a huge issue, but because they are so soft, you have to kind of expect this and just accept it and move on. Just using the 90% grey here for his little legs. Yeah, I seem to have rescued this point on this a little bit better now, which is great. All right, we have got ourselves some little coloured in penguins. And I have to say, they are pretty cute. Okay, for the ones under the water, we are going to use even lighter colours, because again, we think about what we did with the actual rocks and everything here. I am going to grab the 50% warm grey and the white pencil. And I'm going to stick with my pink as well. So that is where we're going to go with that. The warm grey is PC 1054 and the white is PC 958. I think with a lot of these it's just going to be the area around the eye. It's nice to have that little pop of colour against these paler stones. Okay, so I've got my 50% grey here. Oh, I've missed a little penguin eye here. Oh, if you look at that little pop of pink that's just there, that's just perfect. I'm going to take the 50% all the way over each of these. So you can see there, that looks significantly lighter than his counterparts up there. So that's in keeping with what we were trying to achieve. So I'll just do, there's 4 penguins on this side, so I'll do them and I'm go over them with the white pencil. Now this doesn't have a lot of hatching, this little dude, but I'm going to kind of colour him in a little bit. Again, just to kind of deaden the white of the paper because it is pretty stark, to be honest. So I'm just using a medium pressure here. And I'm trying to keep it quite light, but there will be areas like in behind his elbow there, you know, of his flipper, or his, I was going to say wing, I suppose it's a flipper really, isn't it? We want it a little bit more concentrated there, and maybe down on the bottom part here. There we are, maybe just a little bit of tummy. Okay, and I'm just going to go over the top of all of the penguins with my white pencil now. So pretty hard pressure here over the line work, the whole kit and caboodle, because what it does is it softens them, it kind of smudges them out a little bit and makes them look as if they're underwater. I would advise doing your lightest areas first, so where your pink is, just so that you don't dirty it up, because there will be some colour transfer. So start with your pink bits and then you can go, I would say do your white bits at the swell if that's what you want. And then do the actual body. Okay, looking good. So again, you can see there that when you see them in contrast to the ones up the top, they look much lighter, again, as if they are under the water. Just as I did upstairs, I'm going to do the same. I'll speed this bit up, and if there's anything of note, I will let you know. Alright, our penguins are looking fairly dapper there now. The last thing I want to do before we pick out all the really bright colours is I want to give these rocks along the bottom some colour, so basically the parts that aren't going to be plants. And what I want to do is a darker incarnation of what's going on here. So I'm going to go back to the pencils that we used originally. Let's get down in this corner. So the pencils that we used for that were the slate grey PC 936 and the 70% cool grey, which is PC 1065. So it might be quite difficult to pick out what's what here, but everything that I think may be a rock and not a piece of plant life, I am going to fill in these pencils. So again, basic rule of thumb here is hatched area is going to be the grey, the cool grey, sorry, and everything else is going to be the slate grey. And when I'm ready, I'm just going to put one layer of the cool grey over everything just to mute it down so that it doesn't look too blue, because I do want these to be a little bit darker than the bulk of what's going on with the ones above, just so that we can see the difference between the two. So again, that looks like a rock there. The core has literally just fallen out. My slate grey pencil is just kind of going, oh, that's so sad. I'm really hoping I can get through this without getting down to a stub, because I've packed all my spare Prismacolor pencils away. They're gone. So this is really just about picking out, and maybe picking your battles a wee bit as well, actually, because there's a lot of this that's very interesting looking. May or may not be rock formations. As a kit, that looks like it might be greenery, so we'll just fade that out there. Yeah, I'm going to make this little corner all sort of corally because it's very lumpy bumpy. This looks more like a traditional rock though. So I think at this stage with this section, when it comes to this, it's just a case of maybe taking a wee step back and adjusting your eye and figuring out what for yourself what you think you want to make into colourful plant life or underwater life, and what you want as rocks. And it's one of those ones where there's no right or wrong answers to this part. Obviously, you do what looks good, what you think looks right. Okay, the way I'm sort of identifying here is by the top edge, because the rocks have much smoother outlines, it looks like, and then the other ones are kind of like knobbly bobbly. Okay, so The ones that are not knobbly bobbly, I'm making rocks, and the ones that are knobbly bobbly are not rocks. God, that was complicated. And again, we've got like really natural sections here because underneath here is very dark scribbly. That's going to be a shadow under there. And it's a really good place to stop if you're looking, you know, if you're looking to work in these bite-sized sections that I talk about a lot. Speaking of bite-sized sections, I saw the new Johanna Basford colouring book that is coming out in, I think it's November. I want to say October or November. And it's lots of little mini things to colour. If there was ever a colouring book that was right up my street, it's that. So we will be pre-ordering that. That sounds really good. That'll be really good fun. And that, I think that might be nice for me to colour in because I just don't have a lot of time to colour. You know, outside of you guys in the cave here, obviously I always make time for that. Because I was kind of thinking as well that I always have a front to back project on the go when it comes to colouring books, and just now it is The Ink House by Rory Dobner. I would like to have that near completion for Christmas. I don't think I will manage to complete it for Christmas, but I think I could, you know, have it close. And what I would like to do is by my birthday next year, which is March, I would like to be starting a new book. So front to back project just basically means that you start at the front page and you work your way through sequentially. And I was thinking about the next book that I would like to have as a front to back project, because my first one was Enchanted Forest by Johanna Basford, and I'm like, I kind of want to use another Johanna Basford book, but I also don't at the same time because I've already got a completed one. So I think I'm actually gonna go with a Kerby book. Mythomorphia is one of my all-time favourite Kerby books, and I think that is going to be my next front to back book. So I'm quite excited about that. That's going to be a long time. That's going to be like a 2-year, 3-year shot, I think. It took me 5 years to complete Enchanted Forest. Because obviously that was running alongside everything else that I was colouring and, you know, caving and, you know, YouTubing. So there's that. The other thing I'm watching for, see when I'm colouring these rocks in, I am looking for distribution of the colour because I want a nice balance of lots of bright things here, and it will get the contrast of the darker rocks in. So if there's a bit where there might be a little bit of a grey area, get it? As to whether it's a rock or not, I will look at what's surrounding it, because if it has lots of grey rocks around about it, I will make it into some foliage. Do we call it foliage when it's underwater? Does anybody know the answer to that? Please tell me, because I don't know if that's right or not. Aqueous foliage? No, that means it would be water-soluble. Water-soluble foliage, no gem. Ah, goodness me. Right, and I'll just stop there. In this part here, I'm just going to go with the 70% grey. I'm not sure if that's his legs or not, or bits of the rock. No, because he's... so we've got a really nice contrast here between the warm grey of our penguin with the white over it, and then this. So you can see down here, that's clearly like coral, so I'm going to make that really pretty and bright. Yeah, I just wanted a little bit of a colour difference between these rocks at the bottom and the ones here. Maybe to show that they're a little bit further forward, you know, that they're maybe more in the foreground towards us, the viewer. Okay, so now that you've got the idea for this bottom part, I am going to zip my way across, and again I'll just speed this part up and then we can go on to picking up bright colours. Okay, we're ready to rock and roll with our bright colours again. So I am going to grab the orange and the sunburst yellow from the sky here, and I'm going to use that to tie in down the bottom a little bit, and these tiny little fish that are swimming about, that's the colours I'm going to use for that. So we'll start over here, and I think maybe yellow at the front into orange at the back. Look how much this is going to pop out against downstairs. I'm excited about this. I am excited. So really hard pressure, and I'm going to do some smooshing here. So let's see if we can get a couple on the go at once. Might be a bit more difficult to get a noticeable transition between the two colours in some of these very small fish, but we're going to do our best. But you can see even the small ones, the colours popping out so well. And even once we put the white pencil over it, that's still going to stand out really nicely. With the really small ones, I won't bother trying to put some orange in. I'll just keep it with the yellow. Oh, these little guys have got fins and eyes and everything. Yeah, it's a good idea here to have a nice sharp pencil as well, just for ease of getting into the tighter spots, especially these more detailed fish that have got tails. The tail area is pretty small. And when I say they've got tails, like they've got a tail fin, not obviously they've got tails. Oh, goodness me. Sometimes I don't really think before things come out my mouth and I come out with stupid stuff like that. I think we're going to do these sea turtles next. The ones in the back there, I don't think I'm going to even attempt to put anything in there. I'm thinking vibrant greens, so we'll just consult the swatch book for this one and see what we can come up with. So I think spring green definitely, and I'll use the apple green to do a bit of shade on the spring green. Yeah, okay, that sounds good. Okay, so we've got spring green PC913, apple green PC912, and dark green, which is PC908. And what I was thinking was we can use the lightest green all over. So the lightest green is the spring green. So if I just pop this over the shell, over the face, and then taking the dark green, I'm going to use this on the shell. So start to pick out the edges of the shell here. My light source is kind of irrelevant at this point, but I do like to have a light source sort of point, and it's over here in the main picture, so obviously being underwater changes things dramatically, but we're not going to argue too much about that. Built up a little bit, just in a few places. So for his body part, this is where I'm going to use the apple green, so I'm going to set the dark green aside here, and the apple green around the sort of rim of the shell, there's always this sort of ridge, isn't there? It's probably got a name, I don't know what the name is. And then just in the hatched areas as well. So I'm going to run that apple green along those. Yeah! And then just back in with a light layer of spring green over everything, just to sort of blend it together a little bit, make it look less kind of choppy. There we go, so that's going to stand out beautifully as well. And we'll do his little pal over here as well. This is obviously his body. So this one's much easier because we've only got this. We've got a top-down view here. He's having a casual swim on his side. Again, for this, I would probably, just to show off the fact that this shell is in fact rounded, I would probably pick out the two sides there. Again, not scientifically accurate for where our light source is, but better to show that a curvature of a shell than be all, oh, that's where the light source is, especially since we're underwater behind some rocks in the sun setting. Do you see what I'm saying? Let's not make it more complicated than we have to at this point. Okay, and then we've got his little, I was about to say his legs. No, it's not. Flippers. And I get back to that apple green there and just a wee quick squidge of colour. And those hatched lines, and back over with our lightest colour, spring green. Excellent, excellent. Now I did mention in the comments section under the last video that I was thinking about cracking out the neon pencils. Now the Prismacolor neon pencils, they never see the light of day with me because, well, I just really don't have a use for them. Wow! So what I want to use these for specifically is the hairy bits. So if I just point out to you what I mean by a hairy bit, I'll take this this right hand page here and zoom in back down the bottom. Hairy parts are the flora of the underwater that aren't long and skinny like this. So like this is a hairy bit, this is a hairy bit. I don't know whether it's meant to be coral or whatever, but that I'm going to use these 3 neon pencils for that because I think that would be incredibly good fun. So that is obviously neon yellow, neon orange, and neon pink. So that is PC1035, PC1036, and PC1038. Now, I don't know, oh, this is absolutely insane. I think I just want a nice mixture of all of them, so I'm just going to work a little section at a time and see, because these pencils, they don't blend very well together, just because, well, I wouldn't say that they don't blend well together, that's unfair. It's difficult for the human eye to see the blends because they're neon colours. Like the eye does struggle a little bit, and I'm pretty sure my camera's going to struggle with this as well. It doesn't matter what settings I have my camera on, it always wants to correct things and try and make it less offensive. It's happened quite a few times now. I don't know how well that stands out. It looks really washed out from where I'm sitting on the camera, but I can guarantee you that it's like absolute neon colour. And but when I put the white pencil over it, the way you see it now, that's the way I want it to look to the naked eye. But you can see the difference there between these two. Like, it looks really, really washed out, and it's not at all. So we've got this whole hairy corner here to do with. But yeah, this is going to be fun. So I'm going to use the yellow in these hatched areas here. And maybe I'll use some orange. Now, for the regular cavers, you will know how I feel about offensive colours. I don't think we can get much more offensive than this. This is the absolute epitome and or definition of offensive orange and offensive yellow. The other colours that I want to introduce, which I'm probably going to use for these frondy parks, it's the chartreuse colours. So we have a yellow chartreuse and normal chartreuse. So these kind of yellowish green colours here. Yellow chartreuse is PC1004 and the normal chartreuse is PC989. And again, pick these specifically because they are very bright colours. So my kind of thoughts with that was to use the ordinary chartreuse, so the green, to have the sort of roots of these plants. And then with a very pointy point, we're going to have a really good point on the pencil for this. And just fill in those tips with the yellow, like so. And have a darker set of greens as well. I want these to be the sort of emerald green colours. So I'm going to use true green and grass green with a little tiny bit of peacock green, just for good measure and a little bit of contrast. So these three pencils here. So for my grasses, I've got two sets of pencil combos. I've got the chartreuse combo and this little trio here. Again, I'll give you the numbers. So true green, PC910, grass green, PC909, and the peacock green is PC907. Put a little bit more of this neon down here. There we go. So we can do a bit of blend in here, but it's just not quite as obvious with it being the fluorescent colours. Okay, so to show you my darker combo here, I've got some quite thick grasses. So start with the true green. So again, I'll start with my lightest pencil. Pop a little bit of that down there. So even if, you know, I've hardly pressed at all there, it's looking pretty good. And then use the grass green. I'm going to go about halfway up over the top of that, halfway up each of these fronds. And then with the peacock green just down at the base, just at the very bottom. Again, just make it a bit richer, and then I can take my lightest colour and just sort of go back over that, blend it together, make it look a bit more cohesive. And you can see that standing out beautifully against our neon colours as well, so that's giving us yet another pop of colour down in this very bottom section of the water here. So we'll get cracked on with this and see what we can do. Now again, when I'm making the colour choices here, it's just a case for me of doing a little step at a time and deciding what will go best with what I've put down initially, and just to do it by eye. And everybody will be different here and have different ideas of what they want the finished picture to look like. But I do find it's a good idea to step away and come back to it. You know, really get a feel for what you're doing, but rest your eyes a little bit, especially when you're working with a lot of bright colours together. And this is quite a big area, although it doesn't seem it. It really is. And it's going to take a little bit of work. So just take your time, get a feel for it. So I'm taking the opportunity to do this today and finish this off. Mr. Jem is away for his leaving party with some of the people that he works with. And I'll be going to pick him up later. He decided to throw caution to the wind. He was taking antibiotics. He took his last antibiotics this morning. So he's decided he's having an alcoholic beverage, and I've basically just gave him like the equivalent of the mum talk, like be careful, be sensible, don't be knocking back shots or anything like that. So I'm fully prepared for the worst case scenario, because the problem with Mr. Jem, and I don't like to be seen to be making negative remarks about my husband, but unfortunately, one of the problems is that Mr. Jem doesn't really drink very often, and he thinks that he can still drink like he did when he was 21. And I said to him, well, that would be fine if you kind of like kept exercising your drinking muscle, and he really hasn't. So, team that with the antibiotics situation. I'm thinking to myself, this might not be the best idea. But yeah, I am waiting for this outcome. Oh, that was the neon pencil. I didn't mean to pick that one up at all. Oh wow, I'm gonna have some neon plants. There we go. So yeah, I may have a slightly inebriated Mr. Jem to pick up later on, which is fine. That he is allowed. And the one thing I will say, Mr. Jem is never an obnoxious drunk. He's a very, very funny drunk, and he's actually incredibly entertaining. So there's no hassle that way. But it's just like you've got to go through the motions, because he has a habit as well when he's very drunk of repeating himself. So he'll tell you a story, and then about 15 minutes later, you get the same story again. And it's amusing for like the first 3 times. Okay, well, you just shut up now. So there might be a bit of that. One Christmas time, Mum and Papa Jem were here, and the boys went out for their Christmas knees up, and it was Papa Jem that was going to do the chauffeuring just to give me a break from it, because Papa Jem doesn't really drink either, so he's happy to to drive at any point. So he'd said to me, he says, don't worry, the boys were wanting to go from the village into the nearest town, and rather than paying a taxi, Papa Jem said that he would take them. So the village is still like a 20-minute drive away, and the nearest town's like another 15 minutes after that. So it's a fairly long journey. So anyway, Papa Jem went away, and he came back, and I said to him, I asked him, I says, how were the boys? And he started to laugh, and he's like, they're really, really drunk already. And I was like, but they couldn't have been that bad, because they'd only been out for a couple of hours. Oh, I've missed a bit of rock there. I'm going to fill that in. And he was trying to tell me what happened, but he couldn't tell me for laughing so much. And I was like, Dad, what happened? He said Mr. Jem was sitting in the passenger seat beside him, and the other boys were like, there's 3 of them squished in the back. So when he went to drop them off in the town at the pub, Mr. Jem leant over and kissed Papa Jem on the cheek. And Papa Jem says he just couldn't stop laughing, because he obviously just did it automatically because he was in our truck, and I normally take him everywhere. And he said it was really funny. He says, plus it was like the sloppiest kiss of the cheek he's ever had in his life. Well, that was me. That tickled me no end. And I was like, well, that's not really a good indication of the state of affairs, because this was like 8 o'clock at night. I'm like, if they're in that state now to the point where my husband doesn't realise he's kissed his father-in-law on the cheek, we might be in for a rough ride later on. So I ended up going and picking the boys up later on when they were finished. And one of the younger laddos had been quite unwell outside the pub. He just had far too much to drink, and he was being sick over the side of the bridge into the river, as you do. Mr. Jem took great pleasure, once we dropped said gentleman off, Mr. Jem took great pleasure in telling me the story in very great detail about this projectile vomiting, with all the hand actions and the sound effects. So that was fine. That was very funny, very funny. And we got back, and we were only in the door about 2 minutes. And of course, Mama and Papa Jem came to see the spectacle. So he kind of had a wobble about. He was walking about skiddling a cup of tea about, because he likes to think that a cup of tea will sober him up. He always has a cup of tea when he comes in, if he's been drinking. And he proceeded to tell the story to Mama and Papa Jem with all the actions and with the sound effects. And then he sat down on the sofa, sat with his cup of tea. And he was sitting really quietly. We were like doing, I think I was colouring actually. I sat down and started colouring. And about 10 minutes later he pipes up, did I tell you about such and such being sick? Oh, it was disgusting. And he started again, and this went on 3 or 4 times, and I thought Mama Jen was going to die laughing. I really actually thought she was going to fall off her chair or wet herself or something, because with every incarnation of this story, it was embellished slightly, and the actions and the sound effects got more and more dramatic. And eventually, I think this went on for like an hour and a half, and eventually he fell asleep in the chair and didn't finish his cup of tea. But that's the kind of thing we expect from Mr. Jem when he's been drinking. So that's good fun. But see, I don't think he's going to be enjoying himself that much on this particular occasion, just due to the fact that he's been on antibiotics. He's actually quite tired as well. He's had a fairly heavy workload because he's trying to get everyone up to speed before we leave. Okay, I'm just going to soldier on for a bit, so I'm going to speed this up and get all of these bottom bits finished for you, and then we shall get the white pencil out and do the doing. Okay, just before I switch over to the left-hand page there, you can see how we're looking, and that little pop of colour just helps to balance the top and the bottom of the page pretty well. And the colour that you can see on the camera just now is actually what I'm hoping for once I've gone over this bottom part with the white pencil, because it does look a little bit more washed out on the camera than it does, I can see more of the offensive colours as previously discussed, which is great. But you can see why I wanted to have this sort of bright part at the bottom as well. It also takes us away from what I talked about way back at the beginning. A lot of these finished images that I've seen on the internet kind of depict like an icy sort of like regular penguin habitat, and this is the Galapagos Islands in Ecuador. So I feel like using this sort of fancier tropical type colour scheme is just helping to bring the picture back. Because I've picked blue for the rocks, it kind of brings it back to that sort of warmer climate that these penguins are indigenous to. So I decided as well that the neon pencil was a bit much on its own, and you would have seen me there adding in green just at the base of the coral or whatever it is. We're calling it coral. Just to kind of mute it down a little bit. So I've jumped between the 2 darker greens, so that was the grass green and the peacock green as well. And it's not really to add a bit of realism, but it helps to give some contrast between the different sections, because obviously the neon pencils are what they are, and you do struggle for contrast with neon pencils. So that's what I was doing with the green pencils. So let's move over here. I've got the rest of this bottom part to do. I'm going to add a little bit of the dark blue into the turbo bubbles, and then I'm going to get the white pencil out and carry on with that and get done and get finished up. See, now these look like... I'm going to put these in here. Yeah. Mr. Fishy down here. Oh no. There we go. Alright. On to the final step. Oh, I've got pencils everywhere now. This is ridiculous. Yep, so we're looking pretty good along here. I'm quite happy with my little pops of colour. For the turbo bubbles, I think I'm just going to grab the blues that I was using, and a little bit of this light aqua as well. And again, it's just really like most of these bubbles are going to be white, but I just want to put a little bit of, just make it look a little bit less stark. It's swimming along. Okay, right, that's better. Okay, so finally here's my little white pencil. I'm going to give it a bit of a sharpen up just so we don't have to sharpen mid-flow here. And swap out my pencil extender here for my poor little slate grey. So exactly the same technique as before. I'm going to just limit it to these colourful areas though. So I've got my fish and then this neon area here. So just a really quick brush over. And if I just zoom in here, whoa, you can see it's given it that slightly cloudy look, which is what we're after. See, especially with it's more for the neon than anything else. So it's funny, Mr. Jem made a comment yesterday about this page. He was asking what I was filming, because this is me down to the last sort of few videos now, and I said to him that I was filming the last part of this particular page, and he was really surprised, and he said, God, that was really quick. He said, it's a really big page, why, I didn't expect it to be finished by now. And so I was kind of explaining to him about when you've got a double page spread, and that the elements on both sides are either symmetrical or very similar. So I was explaining how we go through the steps of, you know, the technique for each aspect, and then I kind of like do my homework. So he started to laugh. He thought that was funny that the cave is my channel and I give myself homework. So there you go. But it's a really effective way for us to, you know, go through different things and finish up a page fairly quickly without it taking forever. So if you think about it, our last colour along series actually took way longer than this. You just have to watch when you're doing this with the green colour. It can transfer, so just because it's a little bit darker, it's an idea just to go over that separately. Okay, and there we have it, guys. That is us. We are finished. So let me zoom all the way out and get rid of this mountain of pencils. It's a lot of pencils today. And there we go. There are our Galapagos penguins, and we are all finished. So I hope you have enjoyed this, and I hope this has maybe given you some inspiration for your own pages, whether it's Kerby, other penguins, or otherwise. I have thoroughly enjoyed this page. It's been so long since we've done anything in one of Kerby's books, so I'm really pleased to have done this before we finish up here. Today, I mentioned at the start of the video, today is the last day. There'll be items going into the stash shop, so you can go and check them out as well. And I will see you back in the cave on Sunday for our final video before we shut up shop and move. So have a great day, everyone. Bye bye for now.